if you feel like there's an emotion that you're holding back, there's a part of yourself that you're holding back, there's a part of yourself that you just don't think is okay or that you're hiding from the world, I'm telling you, the longer that you hide it, the longer that you repress it, and the longer that you put it underneath that pressure and put it into the corner in the depths of your mind, it will get much, much worse. What's going on, brother? Good morning. Welcome to another morning motivation. This morning, I was actually listening to somebody called Carl Jung. So Carl Jung, if you don't know who he is, he's a Swiss psychologist, and essentially he created this idea of a shadow personality. And that's essentially the traits in which we repress inside of ourselves that we deem unacceptable that come back to haunt us later in life. And I wanted to share something with you today that was one of those traits of mine that I repressed for a very long time, and I was able to actually come over as of recently, as in the past 5 years. And that trait, let me tell you a story real quick about it. Now, back in Michigan, there's something called the Gibraltar Trade Center. I'm not even sure if it's still open, but essentially what it was this like big warehouse where all these vendors and merchants would come and sell their shit, right? So it was a big place. There's cafeterias in there, little play places for kids. And there was even like zoo animals sometimes that they would bring in. It was a very strange place. It's really hard to describe unless you've experienced it before. Anyway, it's a very big place, so it requires a lot of walking. And I'm about like 5 years old at the time, 4 or 5 years old at the time. And my mom starts to take me around with my aunt, you know, to look at all the shit because they sell a lot of cheap stuff there. And, you know, I didn't have a lot of money growing up, so like it was a great place to go shopping for some stuff. You know, we're in there for about maybe 30, 45 minutes, and I start to get tired because I'm a kid. You know, we're walking around a lot, and I want to sit down. So I start to look for a chair. I go over to a chair, and there's this big lady sitting on it, like really fat, probably like 300 plus pounds. And she's taking up multiple chairs because when she's sitting there, it's like her body is kind of like spilling over into the other chairs. There wasn't a place to sit. And I scream out. I said, "Mom, that lady's so fat, I can't sit down." And I was angry when I said it as a kid. And I yelled this as loud as I possibly could because I was upset and I wanted to sit down. And my mom, obviously, she gets embarrassed. And I'm sure she yelled at me. I'm sure she, like, got like frantic about what I said because, it's like the lady was right there. I just, like, screamed that she was fat. So there's another instance, too, when I was younger. When we were going to get McDonald's used to give out these little toys, right? These little like Happy Meals, and they give you little toys and stuff. And I had long hair at the time because I wanted to grow it out. And I was probably like, again, like maybe 3 or 4 years old. And they gave me a girl's toy. And I was wearing overalls at the time and I had long hair. It's like, so in my head, I'm like, I got so angry. I remember the emotion I felt as a kid. I was tensing up my fists and grinding my teeth. I'm like, I am not a girl. So I went up to the counter and I screamed at the fucking person, right? And I'm like, "Excuse me, I am not a girl and you gave me a girl's toy." I'm like 3 or 4 years old this time. Imagine a little kid going up by himself and just like yelling at the employees. Hilarious. Anyway, the reason why I share these things with you is because I was very outspoken as a kid. And I would say things that were on my mind. I would say things that I disagreed with. And I would say things that were sometimes deemed inappropriate, maybe would even hurt people's feelings. And I was very abrasive as a child. Now, obviously, as a kid, you can't really control your emotions that much, but I was outspoken. I would speak my mind, regardless of the emotion that I felt at the time, because when I was happy, I'd also say funny things. I'd make people laugh and stuff. However, in the course of my childhood, at some points, I'm sure my parents deemed my outbursts unacceptable. And they started to shame me for it. They started to be like, "You can't do that. You shouldn't be doing that. That's a bad thing to do." And as a child, you start to process that and you transform that negative response from your parents and you deem that behavior to be unacceptable. So my outspokenness became something that I really, really repressed later in life. It was difficult for me. And there were situations where I would get extremely anxious when people would disagree with me or argue with me in public, even though I love to debate people. It's one of my favorite things to do. But I would get this like random feeling of anxiety that would come through my whole body. My lip would start to quiver and I would just I would just feel frustration. I'm like, why the fuck am I trembling right now? Why am I just like getting so worked up over this when I know what to say to this person? I disagree with them and I feel it in my heart and in my bones that I need to say something, but I was not allowing myself to. I was repressing it from myself. And it's because at some point in my childhood, from the repercussions of me saying these things, my psyche, my psychological makeup decided that that was unacceptable. It was unacceptable to speak your mind. It was unacceptable to disagree with people and debate with people, and even to be abrasive at times. So I repressed it. And as a result, it trickled into my entire life. I got nervous speaking. And it was strange because as a kid, I was always very outgoing. I was always very... Even though I was an introverted kid, I was very outgoing to people. I had good communication skills. And I repressed that in myself. And it was very difficult for me later in life when I had to do things like, stand up for myself. There's many instances where I got bullied because I didn't stand up for myself. A couple of words could have pushed somebody away from me, but I chose to eat those words and I chose to project weakness instead because I thought it was unacceptable to stand up for myself. I thought it was unacceptable to speak my mind. So why am I telling you all this? Well, my hope is that there's not something in your life that you're repressing. It's impossible to say that there's nothing that you repress because everybody has a shadow side. And the people that hide their shadow side have darker and darker shadows than you would imagine, because they repress it so much and they bury it so much that it festers. And it's almost like they're condensing that emotion into a high frequency state, and it gets much, much more volatile and aggressive. So I hope that you're not repressing something in your life that's trickled into your adult world, right? Something that as a child, maybe your parents told you that you couldn't do, or that you weren't able to do, or that it was unacceptable to do. And how is that affecting you today? So I want you to think about yourself. Are there moments where you feel irrational to the situation that's happening in front of you? Like to me, it was like whenever somebody told me that I wasn't good enough, I would get this like aggression in me. I would get this like built up anger and anxiety, and I would start to tremble and shake, and I would just start to get frantic because I wanted so badly to say something, but I would not allow myself to. I would bite my lip because in my mind, it wasn't acceptable to do those things. And the crazy part is this is not a conscious process, guys. So if you're experiencing something like this, you may not even know it's occurring. You may think it's just normal to you. You may be so caught up in the anxiety or the emotion that you're feeling in that current situation that you don't even realize you're repressing something, that it's covering something up, that it's overshadowing something. So look, if there is something in your life that doesn't make sense right now, if you feel like there's an emotion that you're holding back, there's a part of yourself that you're holding back, there's a part of yourself that you just don't think is okay or that you're hiding from the world, I'm telling you, the longer that you hide it, the longer that you repress it, and the longer that you put it underneath that pressure and put it into the corner in the depths of your mind, it will get much, much worse. And it becomes something the French call a self-saboteur. And this basically means that this emotion, this part of yourself that you're repressing that is not part of the whole entity of your being, is starting to sabotage your life in some ways. Maybe that's cyclical patterns like constantly putting you into bad and toxic relationships. Maybe that's you constantly getting fired from jobs. Maybe that's you having a binge eating habit whenever you get sad. It could be putting itself into your life as a repetitive behavior that is slowly sabotaging you. So listen, my friends, I encourage you today, to think very hard and give it some honest thought and reflection. What is it that you're repressing in your life? And what can you do about fixing that? I want to thank you for watching this video today, my friend, and I will see you on the next one.